Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is to take these complex and sometimes contradictory sources and really distill what you need to know.
And today, we're looking at Iran, which is facing, well, it's the ultimate dual crisis.
Right. You've got this escalating international firestorm on one side.
And at the very same time, just severe domestic unrest on the other. It's a system being stretched to its absolute breaking point.
And what our sources are laying out is, it's a situation where diplomatic norms have just completely broken down.
Right, culminating in these very specific, very personalized threats. And internally, the repression we're seeing, it's on a scale that analysts are comparing to, foundational moments in Iran's modern history.
And to really get a handle on that external situation, we have to start with the most, frankly, shocking detail from our sources.
The assassination threat.
Exactly. Iran issuing what's being called a sickening assassination threat against former President Trump. And the quote itself is, "It's just chilling."
This time, they will not miss the target.
That's so precise.
It is. And that statement, it does more than just frame the dynamic. It completely shifts the calculus. We are so far past the usual, geopolitical warnings or these vague threats.
This is something else entirely.
It's a highly aggressive, very personal message that says we are operating outside the normal guardrails now.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. The apex of international rhetoric. The delivery method here says a lot, doesn't it?
It really does. The source says that, quote, "This time it will not miss the target." It was posted on social media.
Which is a very public, a very modern way to deliver a state-level threat. It maximizes the reach.
But it's the image there included. That's the really fascinating part.
What was it?
Our source says Iran shared a photo alongside the threat, and they claimed it was from one of the assassination attempts against President Trump.
Wow. So it's not just a threat for the future.
Exactly. It's an assertion of capability. They're saying, look what we've allegedly done before, and they're amplifying it with this new, very explicit promise. It's about controlling the narrative of their own aggression.
And all of this is happening against a backdrop of what? Completely collapsed dialogue.
Completely. The sources confirm these threats came right after President Trump had publicly just cut off any prospect of talks with Iran.
So the door was slammed shut.
And we have to be clear, this escalation goes both ways. Our sources note that these Iranian threats, they came after a period where President Trump himself had been warning that the U.S. might strike the Islamic Republic.
So it's a classic action-reaction cycle.
It is, but this particular reaction is unusually personal. And that brings up the timeline, which is just, it gives you whiplash.
Right, because how did we get from potential talks to this?
Well, that's the thing. Just 2 days before this whole assassination threat ramps up, President Trump had apparently stated his belief that Iran wanted to negotiate with Washington.
2 days.
48 hours. You go from the possibility of talks to a public assassination threat. That's a volatility that, you really need to grasp to understand the situation.
So it suggests either a massive failure in communication channels,
or a fundamental disagreement inside Iran's power structure on how to handle the pressure. Either way, the normal diplomatic playbook has been thrown out.
Okay, so that's the international picture. It's boiling over. But as we sort of turn our focus inward, the sources show a crisis that is so much more immediate for the average Iranian.
And it's all connected. The internal unrest is completely linked to those external pressures we were just talking about.
So
These massive nationwide protests, they didn't start over politics. They started on December 28th because of, hard, immediate economic pain.
the currency.
The central catalyst was the collapse of the Iranian currency.
And we should probably clarify for you, the listener, why did the currency collapse? Our sources are clear. The economy is being squeezed.
Right, by international sanctions. But just saying sanctions doesn't really capture the trauma, does it?
No, not at all.
These sanctions were designed to choke Iran's ability to sell oil and to transact on the global market.
And oil is their main source of foreign cash.
Exactly. So when you can't sell your oil and you can't access international banking systems, you get rampant inflation. It turns into hyperinflation. People's savings just, poof, turn to dust.
So there's a direct line from this high-stakes international dispute over their nuclear program.
The nuclear file, as the sources call it.
Right. A direct line from that all the way down to the price of bread in Tehran.
Precisely. And that economic failure is what drove people onto the streets. It's not abstract. And the sources confirm the unrest has just kept growing for over 2 weeks, spreading all across the country.
It's not just one city. This is a national movement.
A national scream of distress.
And that scale. That brings us to our next section, the unprecedented, just sheer severity of the government's response. This is where the story gets really dark.
Yeah, it does. And the security response is always the clearest metric we have for how vulnerable a regime feels.
So what are the numbers?
The sources cite a U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, and they put the death toll from the crackdown at a minimum of 2,500 people.
2,500, that number needs some context to really land.
It absolutely does. The sources are explicit here. They say this death toll exceeds that of any other round of protests or unrest in Iran in decades.
In decades, so we're talking about something different here.
Quantitatively and qualitatively different from past cycles of protest. To put it in perspective, one source says this crisis recalls the chaos surrounding the country's 1979 Islamic Revolution.
Wow. When you start hearing comparisons to the revolution that remade the entire country.
You know, the situation is well beyond just typical unrest. It implies the regime has a real fear of systemic collapse.
And they're responding with the most extreme measures.
Exactly. And it's not just on the streets. We're also seeing these alarming threats coming from the judicial system.
What kind of threats?
The judiciary head of Iran has signaled there will be fast trials and executions for people detained in the protests.
Fast trials and executions. That moves this from chaotic street violence to something much more calculated.
It becomes a mechanism of state terror.
Yeah.
It's systematic. It's designed to create maximum fear and just shut down all dissent immediately.
And activists are warning these executions could happen soon.
They are. And this is a critical detail for you to understand. Regardless of what the world thinks, that threat gives the regime incredible leverage inside Iran. The message is simple. The cost of dissent is your life.
Which brings us to our final section. How is the U.S. administration reacting to this explosive combination of events?
Well, we have President Trump warning that the U.S. might take military action over the killing of peaceful demonstrators.
So, very strong language.
Very. He said he believes the killing is significant and that his administration would act accordingly. And he paired that with a moral critique, saying the Iranian government was badly governed.
So he's aligning the U.S. with the protesters, rhetorically at least.
While keeping that military option very much on the table.
But the thing that I found most compelling in the sources was this disconnect, a real disconnect between the president's public confidence in threatening action.
And the private admission that they don't have the facts on the ground.
Exactly. That's the core contradiction, isn't it? He's consulting with his national security team about next steps, specifically trying to get a better handle on the number of people killed and arrested.
He even stated he has yet to receive a confirmed number of Iranians killed.
And this one detail just really sticks with you. He said he's heard 5 different sets of numbers for the death toll.
Hearing 5 different numbers. That tells you everything you need to know about the fog of information in a crisis like this.
It completely undercuts the certainty you'd think you'd need to make policy.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're seriously considering military action on humanitarian grounds, but you can't verify the most fundamental data point, the death count, that creates this massive strategic ambiguity.
It's hard to act accordingly when you don't know what exactly is happening.
And yet, despite that fog, the president made a very firm, a very public promise directly to the Iranian people.
He told them help is on the way.
Help is on the way. It's a powerful phrase, right? It's aimed at boosting the morale of the protesters.
But the source makes a crucial point here.
They do. It notes he didn't offer any details about exactly what this help would entail.
So you have this layered, incredibly ambiguous message being sent. You have threats of military action, you have expressions of humanitarian support.
And at the same time, a public admission that the very basis for that humanitarian claim, the death toll, is unconfirmed.
So what's the net result of all that mixed messaging?
Well, it creates a situation where the Iranian regime has to fear the worst-case scenario, which is U.S. military intervention.
While the protesters are hoping for the best-case scenario, real, meaningful support.
But neither side has any concrete idea what action or help actually means. And that strategic ambiguity, it can be a very powerful tool, or it could be a recipe for a terrible myth calculation.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean for you? Let's try to summarize the core takeaways from digging into these sources.
I think the first big insight is that the Iranian regime is now willing to just break established geopolitical rules. They're choosing these public, personal threats over the old diplomatic games. It's an aggressive, defensive crouch.
And internally, the driver is this economic collapse, which is directly linked to international sanctions, and that has triggered a crackdown, a level of violence and judicial terror that, as our sources say, hasn't been seen since the 1979 revolution.
The regime is in survival mode, and it's prioritizing that survival above absolutely everything else.
Which leads us to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today.
It builds on what we just discussed. We noted that the U.S. administration publicly admitted to not having a confirmed death toll, that they'd heard 5 different sets of numbers, while also promising this unspecified help was on the way.
So consider this. In that chaos, with external powers unable to verify facts on the ground, what does it truly imply when a major power signals intervention, or at least support, without a clear evidence-based reason?
The lack of verified data, combined with a public promise of help, suggests a strategy that's less about an immediate fact-based response and more about trying to influence a highly volatile internal situation through signaling. Signaling hope on one side and maximum pressure on the other.
So the question for you is this. In a chaos that recalls a revolution where every death toll figure is political ammunition, what is the true power and what is the hidden risk of a major world power acting primarily on strategic signaling?
A heavy thought about a very volatile part of the world.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked these critical escalating crises in Iran. We'll see you next time.